Sequels. Everything out there gets some sort of sequel or medium or sequel of some kind, whether it be a direct sequel, a spiritual sequel, or just another entry in a franchise that's not directly connected at all and trying to be anything like it. Like the most common thing being Final Fantasy, where people went, oh, how's it called Final Fantasy if there's like currently 16 of them? That's just a franchise name, okay? They're not actually connected sequels, okay? Just a name, come on. A really good aspect of sequels is the fact that developers get to refine mechanics they may have pretty much start in one entry, but thought this could use some fixing, or just the prospect to get another adventure with the characters and story that they created and just go, I get what the characters do afterwards. Granted, there are also cases where the stories aren't built for what happened afterwards, and not to get around that topic. There are also things people talk about the quote-unquote perfect sequels. The idea of that sequel that took everything the first game did and essentially managed to perfect upon the concept, to the point where some can't even imagine what another entry would even do, but there are also cases where sometimes a sequel may not be as good as the first, or may just be going in a complete different direction, even if it is a complete continuation. Like recently, actually, that's time to this video, but I talk about the XIII Enders franchise, where XIII Enders 1: The Fist of Mars had their own idea and direction when it came to the tone and everything of the franchise, but XIII Enders Second Runner was given a new director for the explicit purpose of trying to shift things to a new direction, even if it doesn't really mesh well with the previous entries. But it is also the favorite entry and what many would consider to be an ideal sequel, even if I disagree, because I would consider an ideal sequel be something that has to essentially drastically change its tone and narrative, just because the people in charge felt like the other two entries didn't really like how they were going. In this case, the fact that they were more bleak and depressing and bittersweet, as opposed to XIII Enders Second Runner, just be more optimistic and action. I brought the Final Fantasy series, where every mainline entry is generally separate, but some entries do, in fact, have their own direct sequels, told through via spin-offs, like Final Fantasy IV The After Years, Final Fantasy X-2 that people only ever talk about the opening cutscene and nothing else, because X-2 is an interesting case where it's about, hey, Final Fantasy X, here are people trying to gain freedom and everything, and X-2 is like, okay, now that you have freedom, what does one do with their life now? And essentially is Yuna's big existential crisis, a very interesting case, even if the narrative isn't all that great or good, but it is a case of trying to do something different, we even highlights in the gameplay with the Dredge Sphere system being even more free than the Sphere Grid system of Final Fantasy X. Then you also have something like Final Fantasy XIII-2, which is so disconnected story-wise from 13. In fact, 13-2 has to essentially retcon part of 13's ending or even justify its own existence, but tries to do things in a different direction, and then 13-3 tries to follow up 13-2 while still being different, to the point where its entire trilogy of games that feel so disconnected in every way, shape, or form, with only a few things that are essentially the through line between all three of them. Just the topic of spiritual sequels to the Mario franchise, because people wouldn't generally say that, hey, Mario Sunshine is a sequel to Mario 64, because there's not exactly a whole lot through line in between them. It's mostly the mechanics being carried over between the two games. You may have some references and stuff, like how Mario Odyssey has references to a bunch of Mario games, but not necessarily say that Super Mario Odyssey is a sequel to those titles. More so, here are some cool callbacks and stuff that's rewarding if you've been a longtime fan of the franchise, or we're building off mechanics from previous entries. Juxtapose that to the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise, where sure you have Sonic Adventure, it does build off the previous entries and everything, but you have direct sequels, Sonic Adventure 2, that follows up on it. And in Sonic Heroes, by a different name, is specifically following up the events of Sonic Adventure 2. Shadow the Hedgehog is also following up events, not just knowledge and stuff, they are actually stuff that happens directly after each game, and they wouldn't exist with the prior one being there, narrative-wise, on top of the trying to build upon it gameplay-wise. It's the kind of thing where Sonic is more so to have direct sequels to the previous title, most of Mario that cares more about advancing the game's mechanics and not exactly having a big long narrative. But another thing, for sequels, the fact of video games especially, a lot of sequels are just, hey, we're carrying over the gameplay and stuff and aspects, but not necessarily the world building everything. When people generally think of sequels, they think of carrying over the story or continuing it. It's also the case of fighting games where they generally get several revisions in the arcade in order to update the game, balance things out, add new characters, etc, etc, where the concept of being direct sequels tends to be more so for the console releases. And the fact that despite BlazBlue having a big narrative, I've generally seen people treat BlazBlue, each entry, not necessarily as a sequel or franchise, but also as just revisions on the game, just several arcade revisions on the title, instead of just seeing it purely as, there's a sequel of this game, here's Calamity Trigger, continuation of the sequel, the Chrono Phantasma is a sequel, Central Fiction is a sequel, then you have the extended versions that are just updated versions of the game, but everyone just think, now this is just BlazBlue version 2, this is BlazBlue version 3, this is BlazBlue version 4, kind of thing when it comes to certain arcade games. Like, people wouldn't exactly look at Tekken and say that, oh, Tekken 3 is just the revision of Tekken 1 and 2, or look at something like, let's say, Tekken 8 and just think, oh, it's the 8th revision, because Tekken is way more drastically different. There are differences and nuances to the BlazBlue titles, but Tekken certainly has way more differences by comparison, so I would think it's just some revision, or like how the Street Fighter 2 series just made a version of Street Fighter 2. That's how people see like BlazBlue, like made different versions of BlazBlue, even if they are technically just sequels of each other. Arcade-wise, you can see why people just feel like, oh, this is just a new version of BlazBlue, since they do reuse the assets and everything, while also updating the characters and their playstyles, opposed to something like Tekken that needs to basically recreate everything from the ground up. Although nowadays, even console fighting games will generally start getting 2.0 or 3.0 releases instead, or updates, which makes them basically more on par with an arcade revision nowadays, compared to just the fact that people aren't going to keep making sequels upon sequels upon sequels, at least not in this economy when it comes to the game industry. One thing that I've heard someone say that I heavily disagree with was the idea that sequels are always less popular than the original, which is a baffling statement, as many sequels go on to be bigger and more beloved and played by them. I get the idea that, oh, someone would have to have played the first entry or earlier entries before getting to a sequel, but no, many just start wherever. So many games also have a recap thing, or can be designed for new players in mind, where you don't need to know certain information when you're going in. But it's a case where many people just start at a sequel. Like, yeah, we got Mass Effect 1, but many people just start at Mass Effect 2 because of new hotness, Mass Effect 3 because there was a new hotness at the time, kind of thing. Even if it's more story focused, but hey, they can start in, the game will just give them a default shepherd to work with. A case is, look at the Batman Arkham series, which granted I can't find exact numbers for it sadly, but when it comes to it, basically all the stories I can find generally list that when it comes to what they did, Arkham Knight was at the bottom, surprisingly to me, then Arkham Origins, then Arkham Asylum, and then Arkham City. The fact that Arkham City, the second entry, was the highest selling one. I'm more surprised that based on what I can find, Arkham Origins sold more than Arkham Knight. You would think the way people talk about it, Arkham Knight would have sold way more, but I guess the jump to being exclusively on next-gen hardware at the time ended up hurting its sales, even if it still sold several millions, so hurting its sales in quotation marks. The Uncharted franchise, one where the sequels kept selling more than the previous entry, just kept going up and up, to the point where Uncharted 4: A Thief's End is the best-selling entry in the franchise. Remember that statement about Arkham Knight selling less because we're going to be on new hardware was a fact bullshit, and Arkham Knight just step up its game. But there's another case where Uncharted kept selling more and more despite it. Now, some would say Uncharted is very lax when it comes to being direct sequels and no previous entries, which is 100% true. but it is one of those things where it is a franchise where each sequel was more popular than the previous entry, at least until the spin-off The Lost Legacy, which didn't do anywhere near a Thief's End's numbers, but still did a lot. Comes to the Kingdom Hearts franchise, Kingdom Hearts 3 is by far the best-selling entry in the franchise. The Kingdom Hearts 1 apparently isn't that far behind it. But it's one of those things where Kingdom Hearts 3, you may go, but Kingdom Hearts 3, yeah, it may be the third mainland entry. It's also like the 12th entry in the franchise, which is a long time. So people try to say that a sequel inherently won't perform better. No, there are many cases like Kingdom Hearts where, yeah, it's Kingdom Hearts and people will enjoy Kingdom Hearts regardless. But considering how much narrative there is in previous entries, everything, it's one of those things where, by people's logic, Kingdom Hearts 3 should have not have sold nearly as well as it does, but it is still currently the best-selling entry by far. Now, since we're talking video game sequels, I'm of course gonna mention how when sequels go very different, like how Silent Hill 2's whole entire narrative, being a more personal, psychological journey of the main character, is completely different from Silent Hill 1 that dealt with cults and the psychological aspect of not the main character, but it's one of those things where Silent Hill 2 is not only became the most beloved entry, but also became essentially how people view Silent Hill in general. The idea of how it functioned, how it used the world, how it used the narrative, and the psychological horror of it became the benchmark of Silent Hill from then afterwards. Even when something like Silent Hill Origins is still to do with the topic of Silent Hill 1's whole entire thing with the cult, it still follows a similar formula to Silent Hill 2 because the sequel was not so much beloved, it essentially became the benchmark what a series is pretty much seen. Metal Gear Solid, being the third entry of the Metal Gear franchise, is basically how people view the entire franchise. Because, like, yeah, the original first two games were released on the MSX PC in Japan, and then Metal Gear 1 got a not as good, not terrible, but not as good version on the Nintendo Entertainment System, and then the sequel just didn't get ported, so eventually ported both games via the MGS3 Substances release on PS2. But it's one of those things with Metal Gear Solid is how people view the franchise, and it's also when people will generally quote everything that started a whole bunch of also memes. The fact that I can overhear people watching Spanish videos on YouTube and hear the Metal Gear alert sound triggers me more than the alert sound probably should. The best-selling Metal Gear game in general is Metal Gear Solid V: The Phantom Pain. Something that many people would probably not agree with the fact that it's a best-selling entry, but the numbers are the numbers. Even if numbers can also be skewed because we don't always have the exact data numbers, and also games get re-releases and their re-release sales tend to get counted with how much they sell as well. So that's beside the point. Also the fact that I'm reading that Metal Gear Solid 2 sold at least 3 million more copies than Penny Metal Solid 3 Snake Eater. I find that surprising because Metal Gear Solid 2 is the entry you see people bitch about the most. And yet Snake Eater, that's supposed to be the fan favorite entry, apparently sold less than Metal Gear Solid 2. That is very interesting to me. Also the fact that apparently Metal Gear Rising sold 6 million copies, which is not only a sequel, but also a spin-off title as well by different developers. And it sold like over 6 million copies, apparently 3 million on console, 3 million on Steam. Man, look at numbers of stuff. It's surprising the hell out of me. Like I said, I can't find the exact numbers, but numbers I'm finding are making me go, really now? Really now? Resident Evil 4, another fan favorite game from a franchise that, while it is a sequel to Resident Evil franchise, also has little to do with it. Like, yeah, you have returning characters like Leon and Ada, but the opening bread of the game kind of just knocks away all the relevancy, like, oh, freaking whole entire thing with Umbrella. Let's just move that to the side, have it dealt with off screen, so we can focus on this new storyline about Saint the President's daughter and Los Eliminados and stuff like that, and Las Plagas, and all the differences with that. Kind of whole entire thing where they want to just do something different entirely, despite it being called Resident Evil 4, but in reality, it has like not a whole lot to do with the previous entries at all. Kind of one of those shocking things about it, where it's like, people's ideal Resident Evil game had little to do with anything that came before, aside from sharing some characters. Resident Evil 4 also be a case like Silent Hill 2, where they radically changed everything about the franchise to a point where everything forward is pretty much done to follow its style. Its horror action style was then expanded upon by Resident Evil 5. Resident Evil 6 then went too far with it until Resident Evil 7 decided to course correct. But then you have the remake games. Resident Evil 2 Remake and 3 Remake are just trying to be Resident Evil 4 again. They're not as action-packed as those, or at least Resident Evil 2 Remake isn't, but it's the fact that they basically try to follow the same formula and everything. Kind of one of those things where some people want to remake Resident Evil 1, but it's like, would the remake be like Resident Evil 1, or would it just be a Resident Evil 4 copy again? Like, Resident Evil 4 Remake did fantastic, and that's good for those people. But it's also a case where some people felt like, you're trying to Resident Evil 4ify Resident Evil 4. What are we doing here? Like, earlier in the video I mentioned Zone of the Enders 2, which should be called Zone of the Enders Second Run, that's the actual name, but beside the point. But it's the fact that that entry wasn't even meant to exist because the first entry wasn't designed with a sequel in mind, which is one of the crazy things. When a franchise doesn't even have an answer, or intentionally didn't have an answer for a certain scenario, it wasn't meant to get a follow-up. Kind of like also how Metal Gear Solid 4 had to answer questions in Metal Gear Solid 2 that were never meant to have answers, where the answers ended up being unsatisfactory for a lot of people, but it's a case of, well, they're scrambling to do something because the publisher Konami wants to make more money, so you need a follow-up. And since the original director, MGS4, got swapped out because people were sending death threats to Kojima, they didn't want to make MGS4. That's why I say MGS4 is a game made with both love and spite. Because Kojima did a lot of stuff in that game to spite the fan base, and you can see why they kind of deserved it. It's one of those things where MGS4 had to do stuff or answer stuff that there were no plans, because after MGS2, there wasn't supposed to be a direct follow-up. Hence why the next game afterwards was a prequel title. Like, I'm over here in this video focusing on sequels, but prequels are also their own can of worms to everything when it comes to how they handle things. Like I said, it'd be its own separate topic of prequels, since the design philosophy has to follow for a prequel title. Like, I already mentioned this video about Batman Arkham Origins, which is a prequel title to the Arkham series, but it has to also deal with the fact of, hey yo, why does Batman have freaking armor plating in Arkham Origins but not Arkham Asylum? But that's a question developers probably didn't think about. But as I say, that's what prequels have their own can of worms to deal with. You also have entire sequel franchises that follow different characters. Like, for the fact that further through line, you have Mega Man, then you have Mega Man X, which is now following a new main character of X. Then you have Mega Man Zero, which is now following Zero as the protagonist. And you gotta follow Mega Man ZX, which, depending on the entry, has technically 4 main characters. You pick one of 2 main characters for each game, with things slightly altering for the sake of that main character. So there's many options where even that whole entire through line of one whole entire series has multiple different design philosophies with their sequels. Mega Man's about careful platforming and dangerous hazards. Mega Man X is about take what I just said, but make it even faster and crazier. Mega Man Zero is about trying to be more heavy action-based, getting close up, or doing challenge runs, or to get more special moves, and stuff like that. Mega Man ZX is all about more Metroidvania, exploration, using the biometals in order to backtrack and stuff like that, and the entire different philosophy despite sequels of each other's franchises. What I also want to mention is also when people blame the sales number of a sequel on a previous entry. Like, one of the most popular go-to things is the fact that people will blame the sales numbers of Mega Man Battle Network 5 and 6 by blaming it on the quality of Battle Network 4. Battle Network 4 being my favorite of Battle Networks, but it has a lot of issues, so you can see why people generally dislike it or find it to be lesser than the rest. So many finding Battle Network 2 to be generally the fan favorite. It's one of those things where people to this day will cite that Battle Network 4's reception is why 5 and 6 didn't do so good, with Battle Network 4 being the best selling of the Battle Network games. Except what I find baffling is, if Battle Network 4 only sold so well because 3 was so good, then shouldn't have 6 sold well because 5 was so good, you know? Why does that logic attract, again, when it comes to that? Why does it believe that this one entry led to declining sales of the rest of the franchise? Like, what is this? Especially since it was so bad, wouldn't people stop buying it? But again, there are many legendary bad games that people still kept buying and everything to this day, like Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, which is also a sequel to Shadow the Hedgehog because they followed through the events, was also a high-selling game at the time when it came out, despite its negative reputation. You also have many games that are stealth sequels where there'll be a turning point in the game that basically reveals that what you've been playing was actually a continuation of a previous title the entire time. With the problem being with this logic being the fact that because they're spoiler related, I can't exactly mention in this video, but it's one of those things designed to make you rethink the entire game you just went through, or if you played the first entry, you're now way more excited on where things are going because you didn't expect this. It's also kind of a thing where developers also kind of have to lie about their game in order to do this kind of idea, because of the fact they don't want to give away that, oh, it's a sequel previous entry. Like I said, they want to make it a surprise and surprise you, but it also means that going into it, players may not have the right mindset going in, and there are some games that may make needing to require previous entry way more needed compared to other entries that may make it to a point where it's a stealth sequel, but you don't have to play the first game. You're fine. But sometimes it'd be like, actually, yeah, I know the first game's kind of important. Whoops! Bad! Just wanted to ramble talk about video game sequels because that one comment someone said about, oh, because this topic was about Legend of Zelda and how Tears in the Kingdom selling still a lot, but not as lot as Breath of the Wild was natural because believe that sequels don't do better. It's like, no, many sequels can do way better than the original. It's the fact that sometimes the sequel ain't it. But there's also a weird case where it's the fact that because of the dumbass Hyrule Historia, they also try to retroactively make games connected when they kind of weren't before and everything. So technically there are some games that are now sequels to each other, but they weren't before, but now trying to make a through line. I mean, kind of, it's just a weird concept. I also want people not to say stuff such as insert thing as a quote-unquote unnecessary sequel. Everything is unnecessary, yes. I mean, it can go for anything. Even a sequel you like can still be unnecessary because, well, was it something they had planned originally? Like I mentioned, MGS4 was a sequel to follow-up stuff that wasn't supposed to have an answer. That logic, okay, MGS2 is an unnecessary sequel. MGS1 is a necessary sequel. Metal Gear 2, what did I just say? Metal Gear 2 is not a necessary sequel, kind of thing. It's not for anything, and when it's like designed for it. Hell, Metal Gear 2 was only made because of the fact that Kojima was upset that Konami made a Metal Gear 2 for Nintendo Entertainment System / Famicom without even consulting him because they wanted to profit off the Metal Gear name and everything, you know? You also have some games that were designed to have a sequel in mind when they were made, so meant to be a setup, and the sequel will capitalize on it. With the example I can think of top of my head being Freedom Wars, where Freedom Wars a lot of setup, everything, leaving off with this big whole entire thing for setup for the sequel. But instead we got the remaster that instead if it does well, they'll probably do a sequel down the road, which I don't know how well the remaster did. I know the original game did very well, not sure about the remaster, but it's also on a point where it's like, I still want that sequel. I'm pretty sure I titled the review I made for that game, where's the sequel, because yeah, I'm still waiting for that sequel of Freedom Wars to capitalize on all the loose threads they made, on top of how higher and higher they could take the potential of Freedom Wars to refine the gameplay in a sequel, because a remaster is still a remaster of PlayStation Vita game at the end of the day. Okay, it's technically not exclusive to sequels, but you also have when certain games also have their own whole entire thing to set up things as well. In my case, we'll bring up Saber and Comrades 7, which had an entire teaser trailer at You Beat Peach Beat Splash. This one irks me because at that point, Saturn Cargo was just in like a spin-off hell where so many titles that continued the story and characters, but they were still spin-offs that would occasionally just drastically change the gameplay, especially if someone who played original 3DS titles and they play completely differently to how the Vita PS4 titles did. So to get what was supposed to be a new mainline title and everything that also combined having characters from the numbered titles with the spin-off titles as well, finally combining the overall roster of characters to one entire big game, and then it never happens, and I'm a little disappointed. It never officially canceled it, technically. So technically it's in a limbo state where, for all intents and purposes, they're supposed to be working on it at some point, but we don't know if they ever will, and probably won't. All we do is mobile games now, and I've been paid, is what I'm trying to say. Mario sometimes still takes into account the sequels that got cancelled behind the scenes we didn't even know about. Like the fact that one day, one of the artists for Mega Man Star Force series just casually tweets out how there was a canceled Star Force 4 and put out a concept art of what it would have been like as one of those, huh? Seeing as people thought Star Force 3 wrapped things up pretty well and everything. Or something like Battle Number 6, which wasn't designed to be a finale. They're supposed to instead have more after it, which my Battle Number 6 has completely newly done sprites and everything, but then it was like, hey, gotta go to DS for Star Force, so they decided to have to basically take all that work they did and just go straight to Star Force, where, then, they wanted more sequels for that, and then it's like, nope, can't do that. Or the Hunter aspect when sequels get done by different developers, everything, which was constantly to happen. I mean, people love Resident Evil, but over the years, many different people have had their hand on making Resident Evil titles, even if they are direct follow-ups of each other, everything, for the most part, whole entire situation. For an example, I believe it was for Beautiful Joe. Beautiful Joe ended in a way where there would be a character included that the whoever handles the sequel could not ignore their inclusion because the first game made a big deal that they would now be a capable character for the sequel. It's one of those things where it's like throwing down this gauntlet saying, and now you must use them for the sequel because you have no choice. Quantum aspect. So it's one of those things where just like, because for a sequel, there'd be different developers down the road, or the fact that maybe some developers set them up that may get ignored later, or the whole entire aspect of developers put stuff there for the fact that they just can't ignore it down the road because it's a whole entire big point. Since I just realized with this whole entire video without mentioning video game sequels that I prefer, time to start listing some, like Mega Man Legends 2. Taking the idea of Mega Man Legends, which was pretty much set in one island, Cadillacs Island, and expanding it to an entire world with different locales, different kind of dungeons, and everything to go for, it could be able to also increase your regular license, which, while it meant more exploration, also meant upping the difficulty of the game. Also meant more characters to interact with rather than just the Bond family, even if the Bond family are interesting and fun characters to have. Yeah, some of the dungeons were not exactly great, but I do like the expanded story and everything that goes on, and the gameplay with the lock-on button, now starting to have you stand in position, now basically you can move and shoot and everything while you lock on. I like the original control scheme, it is completely tank control, but I feel like strafing was done well, but here the lock-on just feels better to use, even if there are some special weapons that are the most blatant win button. Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. I enjoyed the card-based gameplay of the whole entire thing, but also the fact that Chain of Memories sets up so much that the franchise will later use on. Whether it be Resident Evil 13 everything, or the entire storyline with Riku that you unlock in the reverse rebirth section of the entire game. It's also where Riku started becoming my favorite character in the franchise, but I just really love the card-based gameplay and how they managed to pretty much make a combat system that fit for the Game Boy Advance with Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. I don't like the PS2 version as much because the card-based gameplay doesn't really work as well in 3D and everything, on top of the fact that limitations for Game Boy Advance now have no excuse when they suddenly go onto the PS2 and instead just look more awkward everything. But Chain of Memories is a sequel that I very much enjoy. I know many just try to skip it or only watch the cutscenes of it, but Chain of Memories is my favorite of Kingdom Hearts titles. Project Cross Zone 2. Mostly because it fixed an issue in Namco Cross Capcom for the Cross Zone 1 head, which is the obnoxious amount of enemy units that they will constantly place in your way. You also the fact that overall the main scenario just uses the characters better because having interactions in between them, whether it be the villain characters messing with the heroes or just the fun bits with the heroes, like one level in particular I remember is one where Saga Sanchiro tosses Yuri and Flynn from Tales of Vesperia across the entire map because there's no time to waste in order to save Estelle, so he just throws them across, just fun stuff like that. Or even just small gags where it'd be like, oh, here's Mega Man X terrified of doing this platforming bit because spikes will instantly kill him, and the character's like, I don't get it, he's a robot, why are you so afraid? Or the fact that they gave opportunity for characters that either didn't get spotlight in their own franchise for a long while, or gave spotlight to characters who didn't really have much in the original games, like Natsu from Soul Calibur 5, who didn't get much of anything because other characters did, and now they managed to find a role for her, and there are people who do enjoy her character because of Project Cross Zone 2. There's the fact that you wish that, Soul Calibur 5 was able to actually do something with her. While Saints Row 2 is my favorite in the series, I will instead highlight Saints Row 4 just because of the fact that the premise itself feels like something that should not have worked, and instead, it ended up working pretty damn well overall, on top of all the callbacks and references paying homage to the earlier Saints Row titles. It is a game that does pay tribute to those games and respects them, even though it feels like the premise of playing as a president like a space alien feels like it really shouldn't. And there's just the powers in the gameplay, so they're super fun to have, although while I appreciate they happen early on, I also feel you don't really get much time to spend when it comes to using some of the aspects like, the vehicles, but the superpowers are really damn fun to have. And like I said, the fact that it feels like it actually pays respect to the earlier titles is just shocking to me, but Saints Row 4 is my favorite entry, but I'm just surprised that, it's just a case of I played it first years ago, is what I said, this game has no right being this good. I'm gonna put 3 games in this spot. The Persona 2 duology, just for the fact that they managed to take aspects that Persona 1 didn't necessarily explicitly say when it comes to something as the villain, and then decide to pretty much make that person into the entire main villain for this game, and then just run with the whole entire thing, on top of how well it brings back characters from the first game, and has them here, whether they play a role in the combat itself as a party member, or is it just off to the side, the stuff that they're doing. It's just great to see the characters come back, on top of how it specifically serves to flesh out the new characters for this these entries specifically. But I'm also gonna put Persona 5 Strikers here. Persona 5 Strikers, I feel, is the best Persona 5 game, hands down. If Fido takes aspects of Persona 5 that I thought could have been better, and does make it better narrative-wise when it comes to the villains, although it is doing some of the purpose of the villains to try to make them more redeemable, sympathizable, compared to Persona 5 that wanted to make them as hateable as humanly possible. But I like the villains here, especially when it comes to one of the late-game villains, who I feel is the best Persona 5 villain, hands down. I literally labeled a video, the best Persona 5 villain, everything. Also the fact that I said that when I beat the game initially, I'm gonna say it again. It's one of those cases where I'm like, wow, we're gonna write a narrative for this game so well. Why'd you even bother Persona 5 Royal? I know it's hard to say, but it's one of those things that I just feel like how well the overall narrative this whole entire runtime happens, it just makes me feel like the Royal storyline just can't even hold a candle. It's like, what was the point? As for the gameplay, it's the fact that they managed to take a turn-based RPG and adapt it well to an action RPG while adding their own mechanics. It couldn't even fixing issues that I had with Persona 5, like certain mechanics in combat, like one more auto attack would essentially vanish when it came to boss fights, but here they remain on top of the Phantom Dash mechanic that allows you to interact with the boss arena and everything. So it's great how they manage to adapt mechanics while adding their own entire spin to it. And so the stealth is way worse here, but it also was bland P5 to a point where it basically played itself, so I count that one. Last one I'll mention is Mario Solid 2, Sons of Liberty, because of all the things it managed to improve from Metal Gear Solid, being able to hold people up and get unlockables for doing so to everything, the little small stuff like being able to do pull-ups to increase the stamina so you can stealth better and everything, or the fact that there's just one locale where there's an enemy that can spot you from a loading zone and you can actually knock them out and shoot them from that area. Just stuff like that in the game, just super cool. I know many people don't like the fact that to go to the nodes and everything in order to unlock the freaking radar and everything, but honestly, I find it a fun challenge. They want you to essentially know the layout of the room before they then just give you the easy win button of here's a little thing that tells you where every enemy is standing kind of thing, you know? I know many complain because, but I don't get to play as Snake, I got to play as Raiden, and Raiden's so lame. I think Raiden's the best protagonist in Mario Solid franchise, to the point where I think Mario Solid 4 and Revengeance do damage to his character by constantly reverting him from the point MGS2 strive for in order to try and make him more action, murder-heavy person, which ironically MGS2 tries to move away from, and here people are like, but that's where I clap. It's like, y'all know Solid Snake's a dork, right? Y'all know Solid Snake's a freaking dweeb, right? Apparently not. People forget that Titan Mega Solid aren't meant to be this super legendary badass people. They're meant to be also these goofballs that, despite their status legendary, they aren't perfect and superhuman beings. They're also just regular dudes who have their own fascinations and everything and obsessions. Like how Nick and Snake in MGS3 want to take off his pants, right? I was obsessed with a cardboard box and everything. You know? Or as I've seen more and more, people want a Dead by Daylight 2, not for any actual big, like, narrative or gameplay reasons, but because they feel like if the developers start from scratch, they can create a better base that won't be so buggy as the one they currently have now. It's like how also, when the game Among Us became a big hit, it's also the fact that developers were also considering making an Among Us 2 to a more better base, but didn't want to screw over fans who just got the first Among Us, so decided to scrap the sequel and to instead keep working on the first title, which is a kind gesture you can see from the aspect of not wanting to screw over your fans, but it's also the question of, you know, the whole base to the game and needing to try to retroactively fit stuff that may not work with the game that wasn't intended to go on for so long, like Dead by Daylight. But one of those things where sometimes the sequel is just because they wanted to just make things work better if you were doing a live service game, you know? Alright then, as I gotta say, alright, go out there, play games, and hopefully a game you enjoy gets a sequel, and it's a sequel you enjoy. A sequel you're despising? Well, at least know that first game that you enjoy, you know? Alright then, so I gotta say on this topic, alright, good day.
Video game sequels are sometimes a mixed bag. Sometimes they are received well, sometimes they aren't received well. What I'm here to talk about are my favorite video game sequels. Now, what I want to start off first with is Left 4 Dead 2. Left 4 Dead 2 is obviously a sequel to Left 4 Dead made by Valve. So, Left 4 Dead 2 has a set of different characters. If we're talking about early vanilla Left 4 Dead 2, has a different set of characters. We have Nick, Ellis, Coach, and Rochelle, which are vastly different from the survivors we had in Left 4 Dead 1, which comprised of Bill, Lewis, Zoe, and Francis. In Left 4 Dead 1, Bill was an old veteran. I believe they said his age was 78. We usually don't have accurate ages of the survivors, but I think for Bill they specifically said he's 78. And if that is true, he is very athletic for a 78-year-old man. We have Zoe, who is just known as Teen Angst, but it's assumed she's probably 18, 19. Lewis, who is an office worker, which I like to put him probably in his mid-30s. And Francis, a biker, which I would probably put him in his 40s. But for Left 4 Dead 2's cast, we have Nick the Gambler, who I would say he's probably in his late 20s, early 30s. Ellis, who's definitely in his 20s. Coach, which is, I love Coach. Ellis is a mechanic. Coach is basically a school coach, and I believe he's in his mid-40s, maybe mid to late 40s. And Rochelle, who's a news reporter, I would say she's probably in her early 30s. So, Left 4 Dead 2 takes place in Savannah, Georgia, or Atlanta, Georgia. I know it's in the South. While in Left 4 Dead 1, it takes place in the city. I don't know what city, but I know it's in a northern city. So yeah, Left 4 Dead 2 is comprised of, vanilla Left 4 Dead 2 was comprised of 5 maps. Dead Center, Dark Carnival, Swamp Fever, Hard Rain, and The Parish. The goal is basically to make it out alive. And when you start off with Dead Center, the survivors are just like getting to know each other. Versus where you finish the last campaign in The Parish, they already have been through hell with each other. Even literally, Coach says a line at the start of the Parish campaign where he's like, "We've been through hell getting back down here. Now we at the last mile. Let's make this count." So it's nice to see that throughout the course of the campaigns, the survivors ended up bonding with each other, which is the same chemistry that the Left 4 Dead 1 survivors had when they were bonding with each other. So yeah, you know, it's a very cool story overall, you know, lots of meme-worthy moments, funny moments, etc., but the chemistry works well. I like the banter between the survivors. I like each of the campaigns that we go through. And Left 4 Dead 2 is a very nice sequel. Yes, it was kind of like not rushed in a bad way, but rushed because it's like Left 4 Dead 1 came out in 2008, and then literally less than a year later, in 2009, we got Left 4 Dead 2, so it's like, whoa. But, you know, it's definitely a worthy sequel. I like it. It's very fun, very entertaining, and, you know, maybe one day we'll have a Left 4 Dead 3. Maybe. But Left 4 Dead 2 is a very good game. Mass Effect 3 is the third and final game in the Mass Effect trilogy, and I've said this numerous times. You're probably sick and tired of hearing me say it over and over again, so I'm just gonna summarize it very shortly. Mass Effect 3 is my personal favorite. I love Mass Effect 3. I felt it was the strongest out of the trilogy. No, 2 is the beloved one, but I personally like 3. 3 definitely had a powerful impact to the story. I felt it had a nice conclusion, even though the ending is controversial. Regardless, I still enjoyed 3. I enjoyed the storytelling throughout the entire trilogy, but 3 definitely hounded the storytelling in a good way, in my personal preference and opinion. Definitely made me cry. I was definitely fully bonded with the crew, with the world, with the environments, with everything, and I truly felt like Mass Effect 3 was the strongest out of the trilogy. Dead Space 2 is the second installment in the Dead Space trilogy and my personal favorite. I've said it before, and once again I'll say it again, and I'll summarize it because I've said it 1,000 times by now. Dead Space 2 is my personal favorite. I enjoyed everything about Dead Space 2. You know, I wanted to try to get the hardcore achievement, but that didn't happen. I like the layout of Dead Space 2. I like the maps, the environments, the different areas that we go to, the weapons, the suits. I like the banter that Isaac has, especially that Isaac talks in this game, because if you played original Dead Space 1, he was a silent protagonist, but in Dead Space 2, he started talking, which I found a plus. I liked it, especially, again, spoiler alert, in the ending where, you know, he's fighting Hallucination Nicole, and he says my favorite line, "God damn it, I trusted you, fuck you, and fuck your marker." You know, that really hit home for me, and I liked it. Dead Space 2 is definitely my personal favorite, and the best in the trilogy, in my opinion. Saints Row 2 is the second game in the Saints Row saga, because I lost count about how many Saints Row games there are at this point. So yeah, my introduction to Saints Row was playing Saints Row 3. So I watched a friend play Saints Row 2, and when I tell you it is night and day between the two of them, that is, I cannot express myself more than that. Saints Row 2, because I've never played Saints Row 1, I've only seen clips of Saints Row 1, but I know Saints Row 2 is the beloved one, and I see now why Saints Row 2 is the beloved one. That is pretty much like the most serious and realistic interpretation of like gangs and stuff I've ever seen in a video game. Like Saints Row 3, they were just like celebrities goofing about there, try to be serious moments, but none compared to Saints Row 2, and don't even get me started on 4 and beyond. But Saints Row 2 was definitely so serious, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the story of Saints Row 2. I like seeing the evolution of the Saints and the characters they interacted with and the different gangs and stuff, and it was just a stark contrast to, you know, because again, Saints Row 3 being my first game, I was used to like the light humor and shit, and like, yeah, there were some serious moments, you know, rare serious moments, but it was mostly light humor. And Saints Row 2 was so serious. But yeah, Saints Row 2 definitely became a favorite among my list. I really enjoyed watching that gameplay, and wow, Saints Row 2 is so damn good. Half-Life 2 is a sequel to Half-Life made by Valve. Now, Half-Life is another favorite series that I've played by Valve. I enjoyed the Half-Life 1s, you know, regular Half-Life 1, Opposing Force, and even Blue Shift. Yes, that's a controversial thing because apparently people shit on Blue Shift, but I liked Blue Shift as well. But Half-Life 2 is a very good sequel to Half-Life, and I also enjoyed, you know, the episodes that came along with it. But as for main Half-Life 2, I enjoyed it. You know, it was nice to see that Gordon Freeman, spoiler alert, it was nice to see that Gordon Freeman was, you know, unfrozen after an unknown specified amount of time happened. Though it shouldn't be that long, as, you know, when you meet Kleiner and Eli, two scientists who claim to have been there during the Black Mesa incident, and they're old men, it shouldn't be that long. So technically Gordon shouldn't have been frozen for that long, but it kind of, at the same time, does seem like he was frozen for that long. Then there's the whole gimmick about, like, yeah, like, even though Half-Life 2 seems futuristic, it's because the Combine, which aren't human and they're aliens, and they took over because Dr. Breen, which is the main antagonist of Half-Life 2, sold Earth essentially to the Combine, and it's a whole mess. But regardless, I was able to follow the story, and like, I enjoyed it. The story was cool. It's always nice playing games on the Source engine. I don't know, there's something cool and unique about the Source engine that I personally like. Yeah, you know, Gordon Freeman's famous crowbar and fighting all the head crabs and all the monsters and stuff, and the Combine. It just, everything is cool. Everything's interactable. You know, it's cool gimmicks and stuff. I like the aliens. I like the cast. I like the people you interact with, the weapons you shoot, the vehicles you drive. It's just cool. I have no complaints about Half-Life 2. It's definitely a worthy sequel. Dragon Ball Z Boost Fury is the third installment in the Legacy of Goku series. Now, I've mentioned this before, so I'll briefly brush over this. I personally like Boost Fury. I know Legacy of Goku 2 is the beloved one, and I also like Legacy of Goku 2, but Boost Fury is my personal favorite because that one, I played this one before Legacy of Goku 2, and this was another strong contender in my childhood. I, you know, 100% of the game, got all the exhibits, unlocked Gogeta as a secret fusion to free roam, you know, max leveled my characters, their stats, etc., etc. Boost Fury is definitely a good game. It goes through the story of the Boost Saga, throwing in some filler here and there, like you get to fight Broly. You also fight Janemba, you know, that's the whole Fusion Reborn movie. It loosely does Broly's Second Coming, and fun fact, in the cut content of an early build for Boost Fury, Super Android 13 was actually supposed to be in the game. There is a actual full playable demo build that you can download off the internet where you can actually play the build where Android 13 is. He's fully animated, like he has his own unique moveset and everything, but I don't know why they cut him out. Maybe like they ran out of time, because he seemed perfectly fine. I don't know if there were like some hidden things behind the scenes that prevented him from going into the full game. He even had an animated portrait that was ready, a sprite portrait that was ready, but for some reason Android 13 was just cut. Now, you know, again, it doesn't make sense. I mean, you know, the Z movies are non-canon, so they really don't make sense to begin with. But in the context of this game, it doesn't make sense for Android 13 to be in Boost Fury. Like, he would have fit in Legacy of Goku 2, because in Legacy of Goku 2 they threw in Cooler in there, which does make sense, but no Metal Cooler. And they do mention Garlic Jr., but he's never seen, even though Garlic Jr. actually has a portrait, but no model of him exists. So yeah, it's funny to see that Android 13 was considered for Boost Fury and he was fully animated and ready to go, but they just cut him out for some reason. But besides that, Boost Fury was good. I enjoyed the story. You know, I enjoyed Boost Fury is also the second game to use the Bruce Faulkner soundtrack. Legacy of Goku 2 was the first one to use the Bruce Faulkner soundtrack. So if you grew up with the Bruce Faulkner Z edition, you know, this is for you. Literally, this was for me. So I enjoyed Boost Fury. It was a very good game. Metroid Fusion. Now, this is a strong, absolutely strong contender in my childhood. I remember I randomly played this game. This was like back when I just got games because I thought they looked good. Well, I mean, that's kind of a bad habit I still have to this day. Sometimes I do get games just because I think they look good. I try to do research here and there, but for the most part, it's just like, hey, this looks interesting / good. I'm gonna get it. So I remember I got Fusion when I was a kid because it just looked good and interesting. And I was really into it. Like, I don't know, I guess from a young age I was always into like space concepts and stuff, so it being in space was pretty cool. I knew nothing about Metroid because, again, this was my first Metroid game. I played Zero Mission after this, but Fusion was my first game. And I remember my fondest memory is like after, besides like the bosses, the music, the locations, the power-ups, all that jazz, my fondest memory was when I beat Metroid Fusion. I remember at the end, it showed Samus at from a distance, and when she removed her suit to reveal her Zero suit. At the time, I didn't know this, right? Because it was from a long distance, so I thought, and it wasn't like her full suit. Like, she only removed her helmet. Because if you do certain percentages, you get different endings, pictures, and, you know, stuff like that, depending on the percentage and how well you did in the game. So for me, all I did was have Samus take off her helmet. She still kept her power suit on. So again, I didn't know this. Kid me, when I saw that, I thought, oh, it's just a dude with long blonde hair. And then until it zoomed in, and I was like, wait a minute, be still my beating heart. And after that, it was just sold. It was just sold, and I became a huge Metroid fan, and I am still a huge Metroid fan to this day. I love Samus. She's pretty cool. She's pretty badass. But yeah, I enjoyed Metroid Fusion. You know, Sector 5 is definitely my favorite because I'm a nature guy, so I also like, you know, environmental things. So it being an ice sector was pretty cool. I also like Sector 4, which was a completely aquatic sector, and I know that's a hot take because usually underwater levels in video games are despised upon, but I like underwater levels. It's pretty cool. You know, you can reference my Mass Effect 3 DLC review when I talked about the Leviathan DLC. I like the underwater aspect as well. A lot of sectors in this game were pretty cool. Very good design. Like the power-ups. The speed booster was my absolute favorite. Yeah, when you fought the Series X in Sector 4, he scared the crap out of me. Because I remember every time you would hit him, he would play like this demonic sound and just speed like a bat out of hell. So I was definitely scared of him as a kid. But the power-up for the speed booster was so cool. I felt unstoppable using the speed booster. And the SAX also scared me. Oh my goodness. The first cutscene that happens where the SAX blows up the elevator as you're traversing down the elevator and then looks directly at the camera, and you just see like those blank eyes staring at you. Oh my god, that scared the hell out of me. Metroid Fusion is definitely a good game and near and dear to my heart. Dead Rising 2 is a sequel to Dead Rising, and it uses a different protagonist called Chuck Green. Now, Dead Rising 2 is also near and dear to my heart because that's my first Dead Rising game. I was late to Dead Rising, so I did not play Dead Rising 1. I only recently played Dead Rising 1. However, Dead Rising 2 is still a good game regardless, and I enjoyed it. I have very fond memories. You know, at first I was frustrated because the concept of like timed events were new to me. That was the first time I think I ever played a game with timed events. So the fact that I had to rush from point A to point B to do stuff, to get things here and there, if not it'd be a game over, really pissed me off and frustrated me, but eventually I grew to like it. So yeah, you know, I enjoyed Dead Rising 2's story. I enjoyed Chuck Green, my favorite protagonist. I love Frank West as well, don't get me wrong, but Chuck Green is definitely my favorite protagonist. My fondest memories are always spamming like the call-out feature in case there was a survivor or something where he would be just like, hey, hello, is anyone out there? Somebody? Anybody? Hello? I always like doing that. And my favorite location in Dead Rising 2, oh my god, my absolute favorite location is the Atlantica Casino. Now, you already know where this is going. Number one, not only because it's aquatic theme, but number two, the theme, the music, the background music that plays for the Atlantica Casino theme, absolutely heavenly. I remember when I learned how to extract audio and stuff, I remember I found that clip online. And I saved that audio to my iPod at the time, and I would always use it to like just relax. I would always like close my eyes, put that at the loudest volume, you know, not enough to damage the ears, of course, and just like relax, listening to that beautiful ambient music with like the angelic like singing and whatever you call that, and it's just I really love it. I love ambient music like that. The Atlantica Casino is my favorite location. But yeah, overall the story of Dead Rising 2 is very good. I liked the characters that you interacted with, Rebecca Chang, Stacy, you know, Chuck's daughter Katie. God, Katie had me stressed, always going after her Zombrix and stuff. That was crazy. But yeah, everything was cool. I enjoyed Dead Rising 2. Mega Man Battle Network 6 is the 6th entry and the final entry in the Battle Network series for the GBA. Now, I was kind of out of order for them because, again, I just, you know, got what looked interesting to me, and Mega Man looked interesting to me. The only ones that I owned for the GBA was Battle Network 4. I forget, it was one of the Battle Network 4s. I can't remember which one. I owned both Battle Network 5s and both Battle Network 6s. So, speaking for Battle Network 6, because actually Battle Network 6 is the only one that I actually did fully beat. I never finished 4 or 5. I fully beat 6, so I beat both 6s. So, I really liked the story of 6. It's been a while, so I'm kind of like blank on like most of the details. I do remember that I did enjoy the story, though. And I also definitely enjoyed the Cyber Beast usage. I remember I would always go into a battle with that, and I would mix and match with the power-ups that you can use to transform Mega Man into borrowed powers, and I would fuse that with the Cyber Beast so it would have unique colors and unique abilities. And I remember my favorite part was when you would overuse the Cyber Beast. Like in Mega Man, his icon would look exhausted, and you can use it again, but this time you would not be in control of Mega Man, and he would do whatever the hell he wants. And when you did that, and he did the Beast Roar, and he just was doing his own thing, I so enjoyed that. That was like, I felt so excited whenever that happened. It was cool to me. It was very cool. But yeah, I enjoyed Battle Network 6. I enjoyed getting the power-ups and the chips and all that jazz. I really enjoyed it. Dragon Ball Z Supersonic Warriors 2 is a sequel to Dragon Ball Z Supersonic Warriors for the GBA. This one came out on the DS, I believe, in 2005. And you're damn right, I played both of them. And again, both of them are near and dear to my heart. So I enjoyed Supersonic Warriors 1. The cast was a little bit, like, minuscule, I guess. You know, depending on how much space they have on the GBA, they can only store so much. But Supersonic Warriors 2 definitely, like, broadened the cast. And you even had secret characters, which I found cool, like for Vegeta, for example. If you hover over Super Saiyan Vegeta and hold R and A, you would be able to select Majin Vegeta, which was so cool. And I also enjoyed the supers. Each character had a unique super. You can only do the super, like not normal supers, I'm talking about like ultimate supers. You can only do their ultimate super when they're in their low red health bar, and some of them have a specific angle you have to do it. Like for me, I remember my top 3 that I used to use, especially in the hard arcade mode, would be Gotenks, Metal Cooler, and Broly. For Metal Cooler, you would have to activate your super being on either the left or the right side, and he would spam a bunch of Metal Cooler clones at the enemy and eat their health. For Gotenks, you would have to be above the enemy. You would have to use your super, and he would spam a bunch of ghosts. For Broly, you would have to be underneath the opponent. And when you use your super, he would spam a bunch of energy blasts underneath the opponent, which would like eat their health away. And I remember using those 3 is how I was able to get through the hard ranks of arcade mode. Because in arcade mode, wow, this one I have such fond memories of. I have both hateful and loving memories of it. For arcade mode, it's your average run-of-the-mill, like, you fight enemies, you unlock stuff, and it gets increasingly difficult. However, there were 3 difficult enemies that really pissed me off. 2 of them were somewhat manageable, but the last one was near impossible, and I remember so many times I lost to him. So the first super boss is Broly. Now, they have a unique animation that plays for their super boss and counterpart, and their super boss version is not playable characters. You can only play as a regular variant of them. So for Super Broly, usually his intro move is him transforming and then pointing at you and saying, "Gonna tear you apart." For Super Broly, you know, not Dragon Ball Super Broly, for Super Broly for this game, please. There's a difference. This was before Super. For Super Broly, he would immediately transform, but also like groaning and roaring, and he would start laughing maniacally, and the music would also change, because before his stage was set to his own stage from the movie, so it would have like a heavy metal theme to it. But for this one, when it's Super Broly, the theme kind of does like a dun, 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 like a horror theme. I can't mimic it. Mimicking it doesn't do it justice. You would have to hear it in the game. But it would be like a horror theme. And this motherfucker would spam. Because in the game, you have an energy system, and when your energy goes below 50%, you can't really do any energy attacks unless you charge your energy. But for the super bosses, they negate that. They spam supers like no tomorrow. I remember when I just started the battle, and he spammed me with like 10 energy blasts in one shot. My character immediately died. It was like, okay, cool. So yeah, he would be speeding around the map. He'd become Flash Gordon. He would spam supers like a bat out of hell. He would recover instantaneously. Broly was a bitch to fight. But eventually, I managed to take him down. The second super boss was Cell. And likewise, Cell has a unique animation where he powers up, different to his normal animation, and music would play as well. And likewise, he would spam supers, be fast as hell, and he was also a bitch to fight, but so was manageable as well. Now, the last one, which definitely was not manageable, and I lost thousands of times until I finally got the hang of it, was Goku himself. Now, in this one, he goes Super Saiyan 2. Goku is extremely unique in the fact that when you can normally play as him, he doesn't go Super Saiyan 2. You only can play as him in base or Super Saiyan. Or when you do his ultimate, he goes Super Saiyan 3 briefly. But for this super boss, he actually goes Super Saiyan 2. And he has unique music. While Sam and Broly had like this horror theme music to them, for Goku, he has this theme that kind of feels like you know you're in for a final battle, which is poetic because he literally is the final battle of the game in its entirety. So his stage is the World Tournament, and his music plays, and he transforms, and you could see his hair changes, and he goes Super Saiyan 2, and he says, "Sorry for the wait." And oh my god, again, Spam Central, Speed Demon Central, and he was way more difficult than Broly and Cell was. I lost so many times to him, it was so frustrating, but eventually I got the hang of it. The trick I did was I used Gotenks, and I used Metal Cooler because Metal Cooler can regenerate. And I brought Shenron, which was a support, because the game also allows you to have support characters in it, which aren't playable, but you can use their abilities. So Shenron can bring someone back to life. So I remember I would use that. I would use the combination of Gotenks doing his normal dash, combined with his super ghost spam, and then use Metal Cooler with his regenerative health, and his Metal Cooler army spam, then Shenron to revive him, and repeat the process. And that is how, by sheer luck, I managed to beat Goku. God, that was such a doozy and a half. But Super Sonic Warriors 2 was definitely a good game, and it also had a bunch of cool what-ifs as well. I really liked it. Like, what if Hercule managed Broly, which was, like, so asinine if you think about it. And I've mentioned this in a different video, but also exclusive to the Japanese version, Dragon Ball Z Super Sonic Warriors 2 has a hidden character called Neko Majin Z, which is not in the overseas version. You cannot find the character even if you dynamite in the overseas version. He's exclusive to the JP version. But overall, Super Sonic Warriors 2 was definitely a hell of a good game. Naruto Ninja Council 3 is the third game in the Ninja Council series. Now, I've played both 1 and 2 in the GBA, and I've played 3 and onward. However, 3 is my favorite. I really enjoyed 3. 3 felt like it was the ultimate because it had like a good big roster. It pretty much had all selectable characters from the Naruto saga in its entirety, if I'm recalling correctly. Again, it's been like 20 plus years. And it was very cool. You know, you could do missions, you can, like, you know, versus each other if another person had the same game, etc. And that was cool because the one after that, Ninja Council 4, which was Naruto Shippuden, went back to like just, you know, using preset characters and going along a story. But Ninja Council 3 was like, you know, pretty much like not only was it does follow a story, but also it's like, yeah, you could play as literally any character you want, and they all had like their own jutsus and stuff. I remember I used to use Sasuke a lot, and I would do his fireball jutsu, and there was a cool feature that used the DS's mic, which you would have to blow into the DS's mic to, you know, do the fireball jutsu. Or if you wanted to do like a hand sign jutsu, you would have to use the DS stylus to spin the circle around in order to charge your chakra. It was very cool. I enjoyed it. I liked, you know, playing as the different characters, using their jutsus and stuff, the different stages, locations. It was very cool. I enjoyed it. Sonic Advance 3 is the third and I believe final in the Advance series for the GBA. I'm unsure. I've only played 2 and 3. I know of 1, but I did not own 1. I could never find 1. I played Advance 2 and Advance 3. Advance 3 being my personal favorite. I remember I spent countless hours on it. I really liked going through Zone 99 repeatedly. I also like going through the underwater levels. I liked playing as all the different characters, Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, etc. It was fun. I really enjoyed it. You know, just mindless fun. Like, I enjoyed, you know, doing the speed tracks and just running through it, collecting like coins, rings, the orbs, you know, being invincible for a time, you know, especially Sonic losing was always funny. He would always be like, wah, and then using Tails' ability to help you like fly up to a terrain if you couldn't reach it. Knuckles just fucking bounces Sonic like a rock. Amy hits him with her hammer and stuff like that. I enjoyed it. Sonic Advance 3 was definitely fun, and I definitely burnt a lot of time playing that game. I never got bored of it. Naruto Ultimate Ninja Heroes 2 is the second incarnation in the Ultimate Ninja Heroes series. I remember playing 3 of them on the PSP. I don't know if there was more than that, but I own 3 of them. Ninja Heroes 1, Ninja Heroes 2, The Phantom Fortress, and Shippuden Ninja Heroes 3. Ninja Heroes 2, The Phantom Fortress is my favorite out of the series because it does its own original story, while Ninja Heroes 1 followed the story up until, I believe, the Chunin exams, where Sasuke got the black outfit. Ninja Heroes 2 has its own filler original story because I believe the American release was not caught up to the later arc in Naruto, so we had filler up until we were caught up. I could be wrong. I'm just assuming. But yeah, I really enjoyed the Phantom Fortress. I enjoyed the original story. I had no qualms or complaints about it. It was easy to follow. I liked the princess. I forgot her name again. It's been 20 plus years. I liked her story. I liked going through the different towers and levels and floors and stuff. And it was really enjoyable. I liked it. I don't really have any complaints about it. Dragon Ball Z Raging Blast 2 is the second and last entry in this Raging Blast series. It released for the Xbox 360 and the PS3 back in 2009 and 2010 respectively. Now, I've played both Raging Blast 1 and 2, and I would have to say, in my personal preference, Raging Blast 2 greatly improved and expanded upon Raging Blast 1. I enjoyed Raging Blast 1, don't get me wrong, but Raging Blast 2 was just it for me. It was just it. Now, it didn't have every single character. It was missing some characters, but it had a good chunk of the roster, and it also included a reanimated and retold, at the time, Japan-only release of Plan to Eradicate the Saiyans, which was a movie that never came to the States. The movie does originally exist in old 90s animation on VHS, but that was only if you got a game that was exclusive to some game back in Japan in the 90s. I can't remember what. But yeah, then they reanimated it in 2010 anime fashion, Plan to Eradicate the Saiyans. It's only in sub, it's not dubbed. But I enjoyed it. Hachiak, I can't pronounce his name. Hachiak was a very cool villain. Movie-wise, I think it takes place after Broly, because Goku does mention Broly, if I recall correctly. And it also does show movie villains as well as canon villains. So, like, Frieza shows up, Turles, Cooler, Slug. Yeah, they show up. They're just hallucinations, but they show up. And it's very cool. And I would have to say, because I did end up seeing the VHS old one on a archive video site on the internet, I would have to say, like, the reanimated one is pretty cool, but the original VHS one, it is so cool. Hachiak is way more menacing to me in the VHS one. Like, he beat the shit out of everybody there, especially I think Vegeta or Trunks. I know one of them got their shit clocked in. That was incredible, and I really felt scared. I really felt threatened by Hachiak in the VHS original version. I don't feel as threatened by him in the reanimated one for 2010. But in the original VHS one, he definitely was a menacing presence. So it was pretty cool, and it was also like cool seeing like them talk about, I believe they talked about Tuffles, because at this point, the only talk about Tuffles we knew was in GT. So to hear that, even though again, this is Z movie, so it's still not canon, but even though we heard about that coming from Z, I was like, wait, they're mentioning the Tuffles? GT? So it was just a cool thing to hear back in the day. But yeah, Plan to Eradicate the Saiyans was cool, Raging Blast 2 was cool. I also liked in Raging Blast 2, what's unique about that is that you have tag movements. So if a character is partnered with their canon counterpart and they have a move that they did in the anime, the game actually does it, and they have unique dialogue. You even got achievements for specific ones. Hell, you even get achievements for recreating anime endings. Like you do Angry Kamehameha Super Saiyan Goku on Namek to Frieza, get an achievement for that. You do Super Saiyan 2 Gohan Father Son Kamehameha, get an achievement for that. You do Goku Spirit Bomb to Kid Buu, get an achievement for that. But what I also liked is that they also recited lines directly from the anime. So, for example, the one that I did was Android 17 and 18 doing their tag moves to Future Gohan, and they actually do have unique dialogues to the movies, which was cool. Same thing with Fusion Reborn, or you know, regular Z anime like Vegeta Super Buu, or Super Saiyan 2 Gogeta Majin Vegeta. You know, it was a lot of love and care put into it, and it shows. I really like the tag moves as well, especially the father-son Kamehameha when you do it against Broly. It's very cool. And you can even do, like, you know, regular Z's canon moves. Like, you want to do the Spirit Bomb to Vegeta, you can. Like, you have to have Goku, Krillin, and Gohan on your team. And you have to let Goku die, and when Goku dies, it gives you a button prompt. You have to press the button prompt quickly, then Krillin flies down, grabs the energy from Goku, and throws a Spirit Bomb at Vegeta. And if you don't have Gohan, Vegeta just takes the full hit. You can do this to anybody, but for canon-wise, I'm talking about Vegeta. So Vegeta just takes the full hit if you don't have Gohan, but if you do have Gohan, Vegeta dodges it, and it hits Gohan, and then you have to press another button prompt again to where Gohan throws it back at Vegeta, and then it does the canon thing. And likewise, you can also do that with Goku and Piccolo versus Raditz, where like if you have Piccolo on your team and the enemy is low health, you do your special beam cannon, hit the button prompt, Goku goes behind the enemy, holds them, and the special beam cannon kills both of them. It's a lot of attention to detail and a lot of love and care that was put into it. I really enjoyed it. Raging Blast 2 is definitely among my favorite, and that theme goes hard when you do the Raging Soul theme. I really enjoyed that, and Raging Blast 2 is definitely the best Raging Blast. Hell, the best Dragon Ball Z, like early Dragon Ball Z in my childhood, in my personal preference. Batman Arkham Knight is the final entry in the Arkham series. Now, my personal thing is that I like Arkham Origins, but as for a sequel, Arkham Knight, I definitely enjoy. That's probably my favorite. Now, I know Arkham Knight is controversial. I don't think it was received that well. I don't know what the story or the gist is. All I know and all I care about is that I personally enjoyed it, because at the end of the day, that's what matters, is that I enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed it. I liked free roaming around the city. I know you could do that in the other games, but I liked it. I like doing it here. I also like all the DLCs that it came with, especially that it also had movie tie-ins as well, so you're goddamn right that I used the 89 outfit, that I used the 89 vehicle. I also messed around and did the Dark Knight vehicle, the Dark Knight trilogy outfits, you know, Batman Beyond outfits, the 1960s Adam West Batman, Batman vs. Superman outfit, all that jazz. You know, I tried each and every one of the outfits. I enjoyed it. And I enjoy doing the DLC stories as well, and I really enjoyed Arkham Knight overall. Like, I personally had zero qualms or problems about it. I enjoyed it. It was easy to follow. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the combat. Yeah, but the DLC was definitely a main factor for me, because you already know I was rocking the 89 outfit. You know, I've said it more than once, but 89 is my favorite. Yeah, but I really enjoyed Arkham Knight. You know, not to knock on the other Arkham games. The other Arkham games are good as well, but Arkham Knight is my preferred sequel. Sanctum 2 is a beloved tower defense game that I played back in like the early 2010s. Like, we're talking about 2012, 2013 I played this game. Oh my god, this was a random game I found on Steam. Again, this went, by my logic, this was around the, oh, this game looks cool, let me get it. So I remember I got Sanctum 1, Sanctum 2, and Sanctum TD, which is like a mini chibi game. But Sanctum 2 is my personal favorite out of the Sanctum games. Yeah, the premise is simple. It's like tower defense. You gotta defend the tower from the aliens or whatever those things are. But I liked it. The music was very good. It was such a vibe. I like the characters. They had different abilities. And I don't know, I really like the tower defense you have. Like, you can place whatever tower you desire, like whether it be a gun or specific weapons and ammunitions that were catered to specific aliens' weaknesses. That was very cool. I really enjoyed Sanctum. It was always relaxing. I never felt stressed playing that game because it had such vibey music, and I liked the locations and the areas, and it was very artistic and very cool. Ace Attorney Trials and Tribulations is the third and final game in the original Ace Attorney series. Now, this one, I enjoyed the first two, Ace Attorney and then Justice for All, but Trials and Tribulations really gave me a run for my money. I enjoyed all the characters in there, and the one that always gave me shivers and really stood impactful to me to this very day is Dahlia Hawthorne. Wow, what a fucking bitch. Spoiler alert, but Jesus Christ, she is shown to like have attempted to murder Phoenix multiple times. She tried to murder Diego, which later became Godot, and oh my god, she is just a mess. And it's crazy in the final trial where she tries to take over Maya's body, and you know, after you exercise her in court, it's that batshit crazy. After you exercise her in court, her spirit comes out and she's over here yelling, saying, "No, I'm not ready to go yet." That's just fucking crazy. But the theme that plays whenever she's around, holy shit, it's such a bittersweet theme, because like she tries to, like, she portrays herself as like this face of like innocence, and oh my god, and she's just a total psycho bitch. And I remember, I think her theme song is literally called Distant Traces of Beauty. Oh, just, I remember her theme, her character, everything about Dahlia Hawthorne just like stood out to me, and I never could forget her. That was just a wild ass run that we went through in that final game, and it was just batshit. But I definitely enjoyed Trials and Tribulations. That was pretty much the climax of the original Ace Attorney series for me. Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Now, there's a lot of Five Nights at Freddy's incarnations. However, I would personally say 3 is my favorite, and also 3 is where I feel like the series should have ended. 3 had such a strong and powerful ending to me personally, is what I felt. I remember back in the day, because I was there when FNAF first came out in 2014, and that scared the hell out of me. I was still like a young teen back then, so that scared the hell out of me. But yeah, so I enjoyed FNAF. I enjoyed the FNAF games. I enjoyed FNAF 1, I enjoyed FNAF 2, but 3 was pretty much the climax for the FNAF games for me. That's where I felt like it personally should have ended, because like, I forget, again, it's been a while, not 20 years, thankfully, not yet, but, you know, there was a certain condition you had to do. I forgot, it's been a while. You had to do something in order to get like the true ending, and I remember in like the little flashback, spoiler alert, I remember in the flashbacks, it would show like, the origin of Springtrap, and what happened to those kids, and eventually how like you got this kids of the spirits to like get revenge on Springtrap and stuff. And I remember in one of the endings, which I consider the best ending and how it should have ended, is that it shows the masks of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, and the light is gone, and it has like this passive somber music, and it's like the end, which signifies like now the kids have been avenged and now their souls are at rest and they can rest in peace and all that. And to me, that felt like a perfect ending. That felt so perfect. But money talks, and then we got FNAF 4, and we got XIII, and we got, oh my god, I can't even keep count anymore. I will say I also did enjoy Pizzeria Simulator, because it kind of did tell a bit of a story there, but FNAF 3 I felt like should have been the definitive end of the series. So Mortal Kombat 11 is the 11th entry in the MK series. I have a question mark there, because I did not really consistently play the older MK games, and I think MK9 is supposed to be a reboot, so technically it's supposed to be 9, 10, and 11 in its own trilogy. I don't know. Again, I haven't played the older games. I don't know the accurate story, but I have played 9, 10, and 11. I really enjoyed MK11. I'm a sucker for time travel shenanigans, so the fact that MK11 does time travel shenanigans is beautiful. I love the interactions between the current day cast and their younger past versions of themselves. It's even cooler when, like, you know, spoilers, when you have like the children of the main cast, like Sonya Blade and Johnny Cage's child, Cassie Cage, when she interacts with her literally 90s version younger mom and younger dad from that era, and it's like, whoa, you know, it's pretty cool, it's pretty fun. And likewise, you know, they also got some reoccurring voices to come back, like Harikiri Teragawa as Chang Song. That was pretty cool. That's cool reference to anybody who's watched the 95 movie and who's a fan of the 95 movie. And you know, MK with their DLCs never, in my opinion, disappointed. I remember how I enjoyed in MK9 Freddy Krueger being a DLC character, and also at the time, well, you know, not at the time because it's still a thing to this day, but exclusive to the PS3, you could play as Kratos in MK9. He's not there obviously on the 360 or PC. And then MK10 had Jason, Alien, Predator, etc, etc. But 11 had like a load of DLC characters that I personally knew and liked. Like, oh my god, when I saw RoboCop there, woo, Terminator, woo, Joker, why not, you know? And especially Melina. I was so happy that they brought Melina back, because again, spoiler alert, she dies in MKX, in MK10. So I was happy that they brought Melina back, because I ain't afraid to say it, I love Melina. Melina's hot. She's my personal favorite. And yeah. yeah. So I'm happy that Melina was brought back. And yeah, the story overall was cool. You know, I enjoyed Kronika being the main antagonist. I enjoyed the whole time reset thing. Liu Kang becoming a god was like some batshit crazy thing I didn't expect. But yeah, I enjoyed MK11 overall. I felt like that was the pinnacle of Mortal Kombat-ness. I have not played 1, so I cannot speak on 1. I know the DLC of 1, but I have not played 1. But overall, I enjoyed 11. Persona 5 Strikers is a spin-off / sequel to Persona 5. I would have to say I definitely enjoyed Persona 5 Strikers. I remember watching a friend play it, and it was pretty cool. You know, it was nice seeing the cast again from P5 interact with each other on summer break and stuff, and the spoilers incoming. And the bosses that you faced were very cool. I would say Alice definitely left an impact on me, because like I didn't mind her character, but her music, her theme music, Jesus, that is beautiful. That is absolutely, that perfectly summarizes and describes her to a T. Her theme song is fucking godsend. I love it. I loved her fight. I loved everything about Alice. She was very cool. And onward, you know, like Zenkichi and all that, they're all cool and stuff, but what I really want to talk about, again, spoilers, is Mr. Tony Stark. Wow. My friend definitely tried his damnedest to keep that from me, and goddamn was that such a good fucking surprise. His entire fight was so good. And oh my god, his music was even fucking better. Like, that is a proper villain. That is a proper fucking villain. And the way that he fucking, like, clocks the squad's shit and, like, fucking, like, says such smart and intelligent points. You know, hot take incoming. Hot take incoming. You ready? He is a better enemy than Maruki was in Royal. That's right, I fucking said it. He is a better villain than the third semester fucking villain in Persona 5 Royal. I can't. Maruki is like fucking light years away from fucking this guy. Holy shit, like what? Yeah, no, Tony Stark was definitely the best villain in Strikers, and dare I say the best villain in Persona 5 overall. Like, yeah, that's my personal preference, it's my personal opinion. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is the second installment in the Remake 7 Saga trilogy, whatever the hell it's called at this point. I am not a fan of the remake series of 7. I prefer OG 7 and, you know, all that came with it. Like, you know, Dirge of Cerberus, Advent Children, all that. I felt the 7 story was complete, but nope, here we are in the remake timeline where it, like, fucks with everything. It does some things like it used to, but then it also fucks with things, and I'm not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of it at all. I'm definitely lesser of a fan of Sephiroth in the remake. Sephiroth in OG and Advent Children, that's the Sephiroth I could respect. Sephiroth here, nah, he's a fucking joke. I do not care for Sephiroth here. You know, but there are some aspects of Rebirth I liked. You know, it was cool hanging out with the squad, you know, having bonding time and stuff. It's a little bit stupid how it's like, you know, we're so urgent that we have to get Sephiroth, but oh, let's, you know, take our time and go to a beach party and all this and that. And, you know, the game doesn't think about logic. I'm not gonna think about logic. I'm not gonna put my I'm not gonna think too hard about it. It was just cool bonding with the cast, and of course, you know, my main love interest is Aerith, which, you know, is a damn statement because spoiler alert, Aerith is fated to die, so it's like, wow, you like a girl that's fated to die? Yeah, I guess I do, so sue me. Nothing wrong with Tifa, I just don't care for Tifa in a romantic sense. Aerith is definitely romantic interest for me, but I really liked the story of Rebirth to at certain points of Rebirth. I liked like the whole thing with Zack and Cloud reuniting and the timelines getting fucked up and stuff, and it was just cool to see fucking Zack again was fucking cool, even though he's like so underutilized in the game. And then the fake out, they got me with the fake out where like it showed like Aerith didn't get stabbed, and for a split second, because I had done a playthrough of this with my friend, in a split second, like I thought they changed it. That was a one change I was gonna be plus with. Like I knew eventually it had to correct itself to the proper timeline, so I was expecting like sooner or later, like I guess Aerith does have to die for the canon to be normal. But it's part of me was hoping that what if they change it? What if they change it to where she lives? So the fake out that they did where it's like, oh, she didn't get stabbed, I was so happy. And then JK, she actually died. Yeah, she was supposed to. Yeah, I cried. Yes, I fucking cried. So what? I fucking cried. I cried in OG when she died, and I cried again in Remake when she died. I don't fucking care. I liked Aerith, and to see her die really hurt me. Yeah, who cares? I cried. But yeah, so you know, I don't care for Sephiroth though. Like I would say the one fucking badass moment I liked was when alternate timeline Aerith came to help Cloud fight Sephiroth, and then they were both shit talking Sephiroth, and then Sephiroth was like, silence, you've already played your part. Like, okay man, okay. He said that to Aerith. I was like, okay buddy, okay. But yeah, just the entirety of this remake trilogy thus far has literally been Sephiroth dick sucking simulator. I'm sorry, but that's literally how I personally feel. Because it's like, okay, you know, we fight Sephiroth, we beat him, oh, he leaves. And then we do this again in Rebirth. We fight Sephiroth, we beat him, oh, he leaves. I am so not looking forward to the last game. I told a friend this. At this point, I'm just gonna watch the entire gameplay of it on YouTube and like just go to certain segments because I cannot be bothered. I cannot be bothered. This is ridiculous. Genesis from Crisis Core is my personal favorite, and my personal preference is that he's far better than Remake Sephiroth. I would have enjoyed it if we saw Genesis here, because we're fucking with the timeline, so who the hell cares, right? Why not bring Genesis into it? I hope to God that in the third installment of this remake series, we have Genesis. That's just my hot take. Dragon Ball Z Shin Budokai Another Road is a sequel to Dragon Ball Z Shin Budokai on the PSP. Now, Shin Budokai 1 was a pretty alright game. I don't really have much noteworthy to mention for that. But Shin Budokai Another Road, I felt personally it vastly improved upon and expanded everything of Shin Budokai. So in this one, you're following a cool what-if story of Future Trunks' timeline going into the Buu Saga, and essentially it just spirals into chaos. Babidi is like making clones of everybody and also taking in like movie villains, etc. It's just cool what-if funness. It's not really much to like think deeply about. So what I liked about it is that the story was simple to follow. It also has cool, unique branching paths should you fail or not meet certain conditions. So there's a lot of variety to it. And you can also put anyone you want to like assign protect cities, because your goal is to like protect 3 cities while also eliminating any threats. So for my team, I would comprise it of Android 18, Future Trunks or Goku, and Future Gohan. And it was cool. Like besides the grunting, the fighting, and the announcing of the moves, all that, there was some unique actual voice dialogue for the characters should they win or lose in their respective field, etc. And you can also like unlock things, like you can unlock a jukebox in the main menu to play whatever song you unlocked from the game. You could customize your player card with whatever caption, font, character, etc. It had a lot of intuitivity to it, a lot of creativity, a lot of freedom. And I remember I went on a wild goose chase back in the day because you can unlock Super Saiyan 4 Goku here, but there was a rumor that you can unlock Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta. So I looked upon a bunch of forums, a lot of blog posts back in the day to see if I could find a method onto how to unlock Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta, but that was just a lie. You cannot play a Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta here, only Goku. But regardless, it was fun. It had more characters than it did in regular Shin Budokai, and I just felt like it greatly, vastly improved upon. The camera angles were also it shifted a bit, and you know, I felt like the moves were more polished, and I don't know, it just, everything in Shin Budokai Another Road felt way more like better in my personal opinion than in Shin Budokai 1. So it's just good, fun what-ifness, and definitely was worth my time. And the last one I want to mention is Naruto Shippuden Ninja Destiny 2. Now, I remember playing this on my DS, and I did a reverse order, so I played Ninja Destiny 2 first, and then eventually I found Naruto Ninja Destiny 1. So obviously Ninja Destiny 1 covers Kid Naruto, while Ninja Destiny 2 is of Shippuden. But I enjoy both of them, Ninja Destiny 2 being my personal favorite. I like the music, I like the story, you know, it did the best with the DS mechanics that it could. I especially loved the secret unlocks. It was kind of tedious and difficult to try to unlock some characters. Like, for example, I tried to unlock, I think it was 3-tailed Naruto, or was it 4-tailed Naruto? It was when he was in, like, the QB Fox form, and I remember that was a bitch and a half to try to unlock, but wow, the moves were amazing. You could also use support items in there to, like, heal health or gain a chakra boost or whatever. It's still like a 2D side-scrolling 1v1 type thing. It's like, I enjoyed it. The music, everything, the story that it tries to tell, and, like, the mechanics and stuff, I enjoyed Ninja Destiny 2. That was very fun to play.